The Astroturfing of Astrobot has completely failed. After that 3-week-long media blitzing campaign, after having Jeff Keighley come out and give it a Game of the Year award, in spite of all the marketing and all the hype and all the promotion and all the attempts at making this seem like a major deal, a major cultural phenomenon, Sony has backed off the Astrobot IP with its tail in between its legs. Because there is no denying that games like Donkey Kong Bonanza, games like Kirby and the Forgotten Land, games like even Sonic Frontiers have more long-term relevancy and appeal than Astrobot. You know, people really tried to do this thing where they were like, "Oh, well, it's a platformer, but it's on PlayStation, and there's some iconic PlayStation characters in there and some funny costumes." Like, everything in Astrobot is just blatantly plagiarized from some Nintendo IP. Okay, whether it's like Pikmin or 3D Mario or like whatever. Okay. Everything in this game is just ripped straight from a Nintendo game. It's almost as bad as Power World. Okay, not quite that bad. It's very difficult to get to be as bad as Power World. But like, what they did was downright ridiculous. Like, we were led to believe that this was some major deal, that this was going to be some major milestone in gaming, that this was going to be like some major turning point, that this was the best platform ever made. And much like our Expedition 33, which would come out the following year, the people saying this were not actually fans of the platformer genre, right? The people saying that Astrobot was the best 3D platformer in years completely overlooked games like Super Mario Odyssey, games like Donkey Kong Bonanza, games like Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Like, there are just countless examples of far superior Nintendo first-party 3D platformers out there that just stomp the shit out of Astrobot. The problem is, the gaming industry has always been extraordinarily biased towards PlayStation and its third-party partners. So they come out glazing Baldur's Gate 3, glazing Elden Dingling, glazing Astrobot, glazing Expedition 33, and what happens? Like, Nintendo outperforms all of that, you know? Elden Ring is coming out in the next couple of weeks, and not a single person cares. Not a single person is excited for Elden Ring on Nintendo Switch 2, because fundamentally the game isn't that impressive. You know, Metaphor ReFantazio is coming out soon. Nobody cares. Stellar Blade is coming out soon. No one cares. Like, all of these games that were glazed by the community and hyped to be the next big thing, or to be like, you know, the best games on their respective consoles, or like, you know, the major games of the year, game of the year in some cases, have no true long-term appeal. Okay, and it's not because people already played them, because I myself have not played Astrobot. It's because that these games have no true staying power because nobody ever actually plays them. All that happens when it comes to these Astroturfing campaigns is that a game is hyped up for a couple of weeks, usually up until the Game Awards season, and then that ends, and we just go through this, like, immediately everyone stops talking about it. Immediately people start moving on to the next thing, right? You know, now people are hyped for Grand Theft Auto 6 and Mixtape, and I guess next year those are going to be forgotten too, you know? Like, that's just the reality of the situation we're in, is that game journos have completely killed all their credibility. Even when they rally all the troops and have them all try and push an agenda, like, the simple fact of the matter is that actual players, first of all, don't trust them, but second of all, are playing better games in the same genre on the far superior Nintendo platforms, right? Like, I don't even like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 that much, but I can safely tell you now that it is better than Expedition 33, and that's just, like, an example. Okay, there are like dozens of examples of games that are better than Astrobot. Dozens of examples of games better than Baldur's Gate 3. Dozens of examples better than Elden Dingling. Right? These games simply don't have the cultural impact to remain relevant long term. And no, winning Game of the Year or having a bunch of people make YouTube content about them doesn't make them relevant culturally. And I think that's what we're seeing now, is that actual hardcore gamers are gravitating exclusively towards Nintendo consoles, while like the posers, the plebs, the content creators, the journos, like they're all drifting over to like early access indie game slop and like stream bait, right? They're not really interested in playing games. They're interested in using games as a vehicle to promote their own content and views. Just look at Angry Joe, right? He's not known so much as a gaming YouTuber, but as like, you know, some dude who pushes Democrat and liberal causes through his platform, right? Someone who, you know, damage control for every like horrible movie under the sun. Angry Joe is simply an example of what's wrong with the gaming community today. And that's just one example. But again, the entire industry is like this. It's not really just one person. It was people like Angry Joe who came out and declared Elden Ring the best game of the year, even though he likely never finished it, who declared Baldur's Gate 3 the greatest game ever made, who you know, came out and shilled Expedition 33, even though we know that this motherfucker doesn't play actual turn-based JRPGs. Like, the simple reality is, if you're gonna say that Expedition 33 is the best RPG ever made, you're gonna have to have a certain amount of credibility when talking about the genre. You know, these normies trying to talk about, like, how this is better than any actual JRPG, like, the simple fact is, like, what JRPG have you played in the past 25 years? You know? Like, what 3D platformer have you played in the past couple of decades? You know? Like, it comes down to the same thing where the critics don't know as much about video games as the audience does. And as a result of that, that leads into situations where people try and glaze Astrobot after decades of downplaying the far superior, identical 3D platformers on Nintendo Switch, Nintendo consoles, right? You know, Astrobot is great, but everything else is slop because it's Nintendo exclusive. That's the mindset of these people, right? That is the mindset of these individuals. So what this all means is that these people are completely out of touch and delusional as to what constitutes a good video game. Because if you don't have the knowledge base, if you don't play enough games, if you don't have enough experience, you can't evaluate the genre as a whole. And right now, this is, I think we're seeing like the end of like the game journalism industry as a whole. Like, nobody really cares about what they think. Nobody pays attention to them. The problem now is that they all have like a once a year event where they get together. Jeff Keighley uses his IMAX fortune to like gaslight people into thinking like something like Astrobot is relevant, and it's not really working. Like, all we're seeing now is that people are just beginning to see through the grift. People are beginning to realize that the games that Jeff Keighley gives awards to aren't the games that are the best in the genre or will be remembered 5 to 10 years from now. You know, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is 9 years old this year, right? And it's still better than like something like Expedition 33 or Baldur's Gate 3 and, got a recent, update on Nintendo Switch 2. Like, is that going to get talked about at all at the Game Awards? Is it ever going to get acknowledged? No. And that's with Xenoblade well on its way to becoming, entering the top 10 best-selling JRPG franchises of all time. So, again, a much considerably younger franchise is now competing with, like, Tales and, like, all these other franchises that exist. So, what we're seeing now is that we're seeing the last stand of the traditional gaming industry. Like, this is their best shot. This is like the best they could do. Like, they were able to gaslight people into thinking Astrobot was relevant for like a couple of weeks, but once that period passes, reality sets in and nobody can fool themselves anymore. Because game turtles aren't going to keep talking about it, and there are no actual players to keep the legacy of the game alive. Like, Astrobot faded away before it could ever become a thing. It's better to burn out than to fade away.